it is challenging for journalists from this region because of the nature of the relationship between the media and government in the region. Different countries have their own rules and their own laws regarding freedom of speech and the free media, and those laws tend to be very restrictive and do not enable an open, transparent media environment within which journalists can operate. So when there are events such as political violence or violence with radical groups or terror events, or these are often very difficult to report on because there is an absence of information that journalists are able to get from the authorities. And then there are also restrictions where simply talking about perhaps banned groups, prescribed groups, could itself constitute an offence under the criminal code. And so journalists themselves can end up criminalised just for doing their jobs. So I think this is a key issue, one of a few, but this is probably a very key issue when it comes to reporting and covering violent extremism in this region. I think that journalists can always try to stick to fundamental principles of good journalism, which is being objective or attempting to be objective, to be fair, to be balanced where they can be, where it's suitable, avoiding false balance, giving too much weight to certain narratives that perhaps do not necessarily represent the interests of society, but at the same time they need to be able to work in these difficult environments, and so therefore use these fundamental principles where they can. But it is challenging in this part of the world, and so it's important that they continue to try to exercise them to the best of their abilities, despite the challenging circumstances that they work in. I believe that it's not the primary responsibility of news media to prevent violent extremism. Our mission is to try to provide the facts, to inform a society, to play a role between society and political groups, but to have a critical distance as well, to be trusted. And so when we do our journalism, when we do our jobs, it's important that we do it in a way that does not let's say alienate communities, that doesn't contribute to more stereotyping of groups, of communities, and that is why it's important that we treat the issue of violent extremism and how we cover it extremely sensitively. And when we are looking for ways to mitigate, there are tools that we have, and there are types of journalism that we can use, such as solutions journalism, to see where there are cases where positive outcomes were achieved and can be demonstrably proved through critical evaluation, through evidence, rigorous checking. And when we write those stories, when we produce those stories, then there is an opportunity for other places, other countries, other towns or villages or communities to see those results, those positive outcomes where they've been informed about them through the work of journalists, and then replicate them in their own communities. I covered the conflict in the south of Kyrgyzstan in 2010 in June when there was interethnic violence, and I found it an extremely challenging situation to be working in, from the perspective of my own personal safety and the safety of my colleagues and my friends that were down there with me. It was the first time that I had come across something that was such a sensitive issue and deeply polarizing, and that did an awful lot of damage between interethnic relations between ethnic Kyrgyz and Uzbeks, and Kyrgyzstan's a multicultural society. And I learned about the importance of getting it right, speaking to all sides, and doing, again, sticking to the facts, not opinionating on an issue, and always having that in mind is something very important. We can find ourselves in these very, very challenging, difficult situations, and we must always remember never to take sides.